everybody. Lawrence Sutton. So I work at Thomsons Online Benefits as an enterprise consultant, and I've been working in sort of the benefits and technology industry for about 18 years. I think it's fair to say that I'm a bit of a benefits geek, a bit of a technology geek, a bit of a data geek. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some of that today. It's also going to be based on a couple of areas of research that for Thomsons Online Benefits. So we've got a report that's Innovation Generation, the HR Tech Disconnect. Copies of that will be available at the end of the session as you walk out. And also a couple of bits of research from Mercer. One is a benchmarking HR digital report, as well as another report within that you'll see in the slides. And they're all focused around sort of the same thing, understanding where we are on the digital journey in the HR space. Essentially, where we are in terms of the digital age, there's a lot of pressures. There's a lot of pressures on the HR function to sort of deliver on that. And the way that I see it is there's two areas that HR really have that responsibility. The first is really to sort of develop and acquire those competencies that you need, the organisation will need to sort of meet that new digital age and that new demand. So that's doing things like creating that new work environments, changing the way that leadership works, create an environment where actually innovation within the organisation is allowed, and you encourage people to sort of adapt to change. And a lot of that is coming from, the C-suite above. What I've just been noticing is when I'm going around and sort of talking to organisations in the UK and globally, is actually there's increasing pressure there from the C-suite to say, okay, we know that we have to change and adapt the business to the digital age, and we need you, HR, to help us do it. So actually, that's the first thing, is that the C-suite across all countries, digital age is changing. They're expecting huge transformation within the organisation. That means that things will have to change, the people will have to change, there will need to be more talent. And actually the C-suite at the moment, in terms of their perspective is, you'll see that it varies by industry there, but actually in terms of those organisations that believe they offer a completely digital experience, employee experience, is actually pretty low as we stand today. Some organisations are better than others, but actually there's work to be done, and I think the C-suite are recognising that. Now that is pressure, but I think that brings opportunity in the HR world. We're actually, we've been trying to get a seat at the table at that exec level to influence and steer and lead those discussions so that actually, we can, in the HR community, can actually be more influential in the way that organisations develop. And ultimately, it's HR the first touch point that an employee has, and the last touch point that an employee has within the organisation. So it's key that actually HR are then leading that push. The second area that I think HR have responsibility for in terms of that digital journey is actually developing and making the HR function itself more digital. And what we're trying to do in the HR world is, you'll see there that there's a pyramid or a triangle there in terms of typically at the start of sort of that digital journey, a lot of the effort and the work is done at that HR admin level, that tactical administration. And digitization is all about removing that administration or removing the bulk of that, automating processes, bringing technology in, so actually you can then focus on the other areas. The HR core services in the middle, and obviously that strategic bit at the end. And you'll see there just slightly in the background, it becomes more of a diamond shape in terms of where we're trying to get that effort moving to, and where ultimately those organizations that are further down that digital journey, where they are today and where they're trying to get to. That's not easy, that's just a lot of it. That covers a lot of different areas in terms of the work that needs to be done. It covers a lot of different technology. But actually, starting on that journey is really key, and ultimately where you end up is down to you as an organisation. And a lot of the work that I do is really helping organisations understand their objectives and trying to start to build business cases around that. And traditionally in the HR world, actually it's something that personally I think hasn't been a great capability within the organisation, using data to get the right outcomes, using data to prove a point that means that C-suite at the top level start to listen and start to put the money where you're hoping to get that investment. So, big bold statement, we're in the midst of a HR tech disconnect. Ultimately here, where we are is, I think that more and more I see organisations, when I speak to the HR leaders, is they know what they're trying to do. They're starting to understand what that is. And actually what you'll see from the stats is very few of them think that they are conservative tech adopters. A third think they are innovators, and a third believe that they are early adopters. And actually, I believe that's true. And I think actually more and more there is this need and desire to actually look at different areas of technology and try to use those within the work and actually for the benefit of their employees and the organisation. What they want to achieve is various areas. So these are stats that have sort of appeared from the latest report. And actually, for the first time, what we've seen is that globally consistent employee experience is now top of the experience. It's trying to create something where actually you look after what your employees experience from, well, before they even enter the organisation to the day that they leave. Some of that's to try and achieve better results, the better bottom line. It was talked about earlier in the sessions that actually that's still driving a lot of those desires and objectives. But actually a lot of this is actually bringing back, trying to create that correct life balance for your employees, understanding that they want different experiences within their organisation, personalising that experience for them. So that, for me, was really interesting to see in there. There are still those tactical and objectives within there that exist. So reducing admin, reducing cost. But actually, more and more, what we've seen through the research is they are changing from tactical objectives to more strategic objectives. And I think that sort of change will continue to happen. So that's what we want to achieve. But are HR able to achieve it? Well, in reality, there's barriers there. And what I hear time and time again is we'd like to do this, but we can't. It could be as simple as tools not fit for purpose. So in Debbie's opening session, we had a look at the technology and how dated the sort of technology was. And actually, a lot of this technology is from 2010 or before. And actually, tools aren't fit for purpose. They were built for the right reasons at the right time in the past. But actually, are they fit for purpose today? Change is happening quicker than ever before. And actually, are these systems now trying to be everything to all people? Or actually, what we're finding in terms of our research and where the most effect is happening is where you have a best-of-breed approach, trying to pick the right tools for the right job, and then worry about how you connect those tools together rather than trying to buy a single system to do everything for you. Because in reality, you may get part of that journey done, but I firmly believe that you won't be able to do it. One provider cannot put all their money and invest and get everything correct. So actually, make sure you've got the right tools for fit for purpose. Now, that's easy to say, but the sort of second point there and the third point there are reasons why you might not be able to get that. Again, going back to that C-suite buy-in and trying to be able to sort of have a seat at the table and get the point across. And actually, we'll come on to this in a second, but having the right data to be able to do that. And I think that's key. And I think that's an area where I think as a profession, we actually need to get better at using the data that's available and gathering that and then using it for the right purpose. Again, not an easy job, but it's a journey that we all need to go on. And the final one is other things happening as well. So obviously, there's other areas that HR get involved in a lot of different things. There's limited resources in terms of money. So actually, how can we build that business case to get the investment in the technology, investment in people that can use that technology to deliver the business? Now, what we actually, a piece of research there would actually find quite surprising when I sort of first saw that is, where are people on this journey? Now, I talk to organisations that they feel other people are doing it better than them, or we're a little bit behind. But the reality is that 80% of the participants in the survey that we had around Europe still use on-premise solutions, and only 45% of those use cloud solutions. Everybody is still on this journey, and everybody is going through the same thing. So the more that actually we can communicate and help each other along that journey, the better. Interestingly, only 2% of the organisations that took part in that survey claim to have completed that digital journey. 57% are somewhere in the middle, and around 20% are really at the start of that journey. And actually, when you think about that, that's not actually too surprising, because these things aren't easy to solve, especially when you're talking on a global level, or if you've got a large number of applications that you want to develop or solutions you want to develop. This isn't going to be a 12-month journey for you. You're talking 5 to 10 years to have a full transformational journey. So actually, being somewhere in the middle of that journey isn't bad. It's just understanding and making sure you know where you're going. So how do we start to sort of close that gap? Really, for me, the first thing, it starts with strategy. You know, I am seeing a lot of organizations that want to implement technology, but it's got to be on the back of a strategic objective. It's got to be on the back of something that you have the plan in place. Now, in the research, 59% have digital transformation anchored in the business strategy. Now, I'm expecting that number to go and increase significantly over the sort of coming years. But actually, only 40% of those organizations then reflect that in their HR strategy. Now, again, another disconnect. How can you deliver on your corporate or your organization's overall objectives if you're not delivering that same objective and repeating that back in your HR strategy? So I encourage that sort of digital area to be covered as a key part of the strategy, and only then do I believe that you can actually then start to deliver on that and then actually get the voices heard and the investment that you will need. The next part of that, I think, is key, and this is where the geek in me comes out, but it's the data journey. So within the research that was there was 42% of organizations, only 42% actually thought that they had a single system of truth for their master HR data. So actually, is that a single word where you can get that core HR data and use that to utilize that? Now, that to me didn't surprise me. It's something that I see every day. I was at a HR Leaders Forum last week, and actually that pure challenge of getting data is something that we all experience, and it's not an easy one to solve. Cleaning data isn't an easy thing to do. It's not an enjoyable thing to do, but actually, that's still part of that journey. But until you do that, I don't believe you will be able to get much further along in that journey. And the other side of this was 53% of those organizations, only 53% agreed they had the right other areas, so clean data, the right job functions in place, the right reporting in place to be able to then deliver on that data piece. So it's really sort of key that is the focus. And if I can take this to the benefits world, the area that I work in the most, 56% of organizations spend over 15% of their employee base salary on benefits. That's larger in some organizations. Was still 15% of those organizations that didn't report data in any way, which I don't know, that sort of level of spend to not do any reporting, I think is a little bit dangerous in all honesty. And 9% of those don't actually keep track of anything that they spend. There's also a large proportion who are somewhere in the middle. They do it, but they don't do it quite as well as they want to. So actually, tackling that data challenge, I think, is one of the first parts of that journey. Why can't they do that? Well, actually, it's around that poor quality data is some of that sort of challenge. Trying to get sort of different systems and getting that information into a single system. I remember Debbie put a post on LinkedIn recently is around, actually, in this space, one of the key challenges is having a single source of the truth, having data that's aggregated in a single place that you can then start to use it. And in the session just gone, we talked around, actually, that's not just about HR data. That could be about employee surveys. That could be about take-up rates. So it's actually getting that all into a single place. Not many have done that, and not many have achieved that. There's also that lack of data literacy in the HR function. So, the expectation from above is that you understand data in HR, you use data in HR, but I'll have all those functions within HR adapted to be able to meet that challenge and that demand. And the answer has been no. Pretty much across the board has been no. So there may have been data teams within, the organization, but have they been sat in the HR function using HR data, helping you move that sort of needle to the right in terms of your data literacy? Lack of technology is, again, have that technology in place. It's a bit of a catch-22 situation, this one. Until you get the data, you may not get the investment in the technology, and therefore, where does that cycle stop? The good news is that in the survey, 68% of the organizations now have some form of analytics team within HR that are working to that. That actually number was higher than I actually thought it was going to be, based on sort of my experience. But a lot of that has been done very, very recently. So 41% of that is over the last 18 months. So that's a huge change and a huge shift that actually really excites me because I'm the data geek. But actually it's necessary. And actually, as those functions develop, I think that's can only be good for us to help. And as a technology provider who look at data, it's helping us to develop our solutions as well. So one responsibility I think HR is to push vendors, push providers like ourselves to develop things that help in their job. We can only do that with the feedback. We can guess what data you want. We can guess what information and reporting you need, but we need to work in partnership to be able to develop that. And actually, where part of the struggle has been is talking to people that love data, talking to people that understand how they can use it, and talking to people that can get that data from within the organization. So the more that we're finding to do that, the quicker we can develop our technology, the quicker we can develop solutions that will help. And I think that's across the board for all organizations that will be working in a similar space. The key challenge there is globally as well. So actually, it's all well and good talking about this, but actually, do you have that insight and control over, if you're a global organization, to be able to access that data if it's stored in a spreadsheet in a particular country that nobody's ever seen? And that's part of the challenge is, what is the role of a global HR professional? It's around guidance, it's around, governance, but you can't be the expert in that country. So actually, what you're trying to see more is creating a framework is the way to go, to be able to say, this is what good looks like, and giving that, retaining that autonomy within the country to then deliver against that. And again, you can only start to achieve that if I think it's written down in some form of strategy, some form of objective that people then are accountable and have to deliver to. When you get it right, you can see the improvement. So actually here, what we're seeing is that actually once you start to get a data collection, once you can actually start to measure this, you can actually start to see how successful it is. And I won't go into all these figures here, but actually it starts to prove the fact that actually with good data, you can start to inform design, you can start to make informed decisions around your benefits, around your other areas, and you can start to then measure how that then impacts the engagement of your employees, how that will link to, the engagement of your customers and how the two are tied together. And actually how that can influence things like recruitment and those sort of areas where actually you can start to better communicate the attraction and what that employee experience is like for joining your organization. Data's the start of that journey. And what we sort of say, looking at, is what does the future look like? So, talked a lot about today, Ryan, actually there are those challenges. I think the message from me is, everybody is on this journey, and it's going to, it might not be easy at all the times, but actually it's a path that everybody's going to be taking. And the future for me does look bright, it does look good. If we look at the HR function at all, we talked around that pyramid versus the diamond. As you go on to that sort of more digital maturity of the organization, you're looking to be more of a strategic role and focus on your core HR function. And, organizations sort of moving along that path. And if I was to sort of coin a phrase for me in terms of the benefits world and where I think we're trying to get to and where I believe we will get to very, very quickly is creating those global solutions that have no local compromise. So, we can't live in a world where we have a single global system and we say, this is how you implement it. It's just not going to work. I travel across the world where actually you've got to retain that local specialism, that local tailoring for each and one of your countries and your teams there. So actually delivering good technology, delivering a good digital experience is about tailoring to that local need. It's about not compromising that experience. It's about understanding the providers, the insurers within that market, and actually the technology then facilitates that and automates that and removes that process. But actually, it's on the back of what is a globally consistent experience or methodology. So, set your strategy at a global level. Set what you think you need to, that overall experience needs to be at a global level, but allow your local teams to then tailor that to make sure that is fit for purpose in your market, fit for purpose the talent that they're trying to attract, and caters for that local nuances around whether or not you need particular processes for a particular benefit. The one thing that benefits isn't is straightforward and standard across the world. It's completely different everywhere. So that's really sort of what I wanted to talk about. That's sort of towards there. I think I might have a minute or two in terms of questions. No questions. Thank you very much for your time. We've got the stand outside. As I say, the research will be available for you to pick up. There's other areas that you're really interested in there to read, so I do recommend that you read that, and thank you for listening.